But we need to know where she is. We need her to come home. For that reason, we are offering a family reward of up to $1 million for any information that leads us to her recovery.
If you have been following this case closely, then you already know how unsettling it is. You already know the details that keep you up at night. You already know the questions that still have no answers. But this video is for everyone. Those who have followed every update and those who are just now hearing the name Nancy Guthrie for the first time. This is a complete breakdown of what happened, where the investigation stands, what the evidence tells us, and what it might take for this woman to be found. Before we go any further, there is something important to say. Nancy Guthrie is not a storyline. She is not a case number. She is not a headline. She is an 84-year-old woman, a mother, a grandmother, a widow who built her life in the desert city of Tucson, Arizona, and who, by all accounts, lived quietly, faithfully, and with deep love for her children and grandchildren. Her daughter is one of the most recognized faces in American morning television, but Nancy herself was a private woman. She did not seek the spotlight. She simply lived her life, went to church on Sundays, and took care of herself the best she could at 84 years old, with a pacemaker keeping her heart beating and medication keeping her stable. This is not just a crime story, it is a human story. And if we are going to talk about it honestly, we have to treat it that way. I have been following this case for weeks. I have gone through every credible media outlet I could find. BBC, CBS, NBC, CNN, Fox News, local Tucson news stations. I have looked into court records, law enforcement statements, public FBI releases, sheriff press conferences, and independent reporting. I have tracked every update, every new lead, and every dead end. What I am about to share with you is not speculation dressed up as fact. It is a careful reconstruction of what we actually know. And in the places where we do not know, I will tell you that clearly. Let us start at the beginning. To understand why this case has gripped the entire United States, you have to understand who the Guthrie family is. Charles Guthrie and Nancy Guthrie raised 3 children together in Tucson, Arizona. Charles passed away in 1988, leaving Nancy to carry forward as the matriarch of a family that would go on to achieve remarkable things. She did that. Quietly and steadily, she raised children who became a fighter pilot, a poet, and one of the most famous journalists in the country. Savannah Guthrie is 54 years old. She's been the co-anchor of NBC's Today Show since 2012. She is the network's chief legal correspondent. She has covered presidential elections and interviewed Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and Donald Trump. She holds a law degree from Georgetown University and a journalism degree from the University of Arizona, the same state where her mother still lived. Savannah was born in Australia, but when she was still a toddler, her family relocated to Tucson. That city became her home, and it remained her mother's home for decades. Cameron Guthrie, Cam, as his family calls him, is a retired United States Air Force colonel and F-16 fighter pilot, a man who spent his career flying one of the most demanding aircraft in military history, now caught in a situation where none of his training can bring his mother home. Annie Guthrie is a writer and a poet. She is married to a man named Tommaso Cioni, and she has a son, one of Nancy's grandchildren, with whom the older woman spent meaningful, regular time. Annie is the one who, in the weeks since her mother disappeared, has had to carry the weight of public scrutiny alongside private grief. These are not characters. These are real people, a real family. And what happened to them beginning on the night of January 31st, 2026, is something no family should ever have to face. January 31st, 2026, a Saturday evening in the Catalina foothills neighborhood of Tucson, Arizona, one of the more affluent areas of the city, situated roughly 6 miles northeast of the downtown core, the kind of neighborhood where people feel safe, where the streets are quiet at night, where 84-year-old women live alone without thinking twice about it. Because what is there to be afraid of? Around 9:30 in the evening, 21:30 local time, family members dropped Nancy Guthrie off at her home. She went inside. The door closed behind her. That was the last time anyone in her family saw her in person. The next 4 hours were ordinary, as far as anyone could tell. Then, at precisely 1:47 in the morning on February 1st, something happened. The doorbell camera on Nancy Guthrie's home, the kind of device that millions of Americans use to monitor who comes to their front door, went offline. It was not a power outage. It was not a technical glitch. The camera was physically disconnected, removed. 31 minutes later, at 2:28 in the morning, the app connected to Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker, the implanted cardiac device keeping her heart in rhythm, disconnected from her phone. That app, which monitors the device and allows her doctors and family to track her heart function remotely, simply went silent. Either her phone was taken, destroyed, or moved far enough away from the pacemaker's connection to lose signal entirely. Nobody called for help that night. Nobody in the neighborhood heard anything. Nancy Guthrie simply ceased to be reachable. In the early hours of a Sunday morning, in the home where she had lived her quiet life, it was her church that first noticed something was wrong. Sunday came, and Nancy was not there. That absence was unusual enough to prompt concern. Members of her congregation reached out to the family. The family tried to reach Nancy. When they could not, they called 911. By the time authorities arrived, they found evidence that told a terrible story. On the front porch of Nancy Guthrie's home, investigators discovered blood. Not a large amount, but enough, and it was confirmed to be hers. Search began. Volunteers joined law enforcement. Border Patrol agents were brought in. The search stretched through Sunday and into Monday morning. Nancy Guthrie was nowhere to be found. The FBI released footage, and what it showed created a wave of urgent attention across the country. A figure approaches Nancy Guthrie's front door. He is wearing dark clothing. His face is covered, masked. He is carrying what appears to be a firearm in a holster, and on his back, he carries a black 25-liter backpack, specifically an Ozark Trail hiker pack. That is a brand sold exclusively at Walmart. The man's estimated height, based on analysis of the footage, is between 5 feet 9 inches and 5 feet 10 inches. Average build. Nothing immediately distinguishing about the way he moves, except for one detail. He reaches toward the doorbell camera and covers the lens with foliage. With plants. He is aware of the camera. He is deliberately obscuring it. This is not an opportunistic crime. This is planned. Something else came out later that made investigators look more carefully at the timeline. There was a second doorbell camera image of a man at Nancy Guthrie's property, but this image was captured on a different date. It was taken before the night of the abduction, an unknown number of days earlier. In this earlier image, the man is not wearing the backpack. He is surveilling the property, getting familiar with the layout, learning the cameras, the routines, the patterns of the woman who lived there. This was not someone who acted on impulse. This was someone who watched, planned, and waited. The FBI also noted that the suspect's clothing appeared to have been purchased at Walmart. Sheriff Nanos confirmed that investigators were reviewing surveillance footage from Walmart locations in the surrounding area. Every Walmart in reach of that neighborhood became a potential source of evidence. One other detail about the backpack, the Ozark Trail hiker pack, is a specific model, not a generic bag. It is sold at one retailer. That narrows things. If investigators can find the purchase, a transaction, a store, a camera, they may be able to find the man. In the days following Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, her children did something that is not easy for anyone. They stepped in front of cameras and spoke directly to whoever took their mother. On February 4th, Savannah Guthrie posted a video. Her voice was steady, but the weight in it was unmistakable. She said the family was ready to talk. She addressed whoever was responsible directly. She told them the family needed to know without a doubt, that Nancy was alive and that they had her. That sentence carries everything. It carries fear. It carries the terrible uncertainty of not knowing whether the person you love is still breathing. It carries a family's willingness to set aside pride and anger and simply beg, because that is what you do when the alternative is unthinkable. On February 6th, a third video was released.
We received your message and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace.
Savannah said the family had received a message and they understood. She begged for Nancy's return so they could celebrate with her. She was not performing. She was pleading. On February 12th, the family shared a fourth video. This one including photographs of a young Nancy with her children, captured in decades past. A mother holding her children. A woman laughing. A family whole and together. They were showing the world who Nancy Guthrie was before she became a headline. 24 days after her mother disappeared, Savannah Guthrie announced a $1 million reward for information leading to Nancy's safe return.
But we need to know where she is. We need her to come home. For that reason, we are offering a family reward of up to $1 million for any information that leads us to her recovery.
In that same announcement, she acknowledged something that no child should have to say aloud, that Nancy may be lost. Those three words carried the unbearable weight of a daughter beginning to face the worst. That $1 million from the family was added to a $200,000 reward already offered by the FBI and Tucson crime stoppers. The total reward now stands at $1.2 million. And still, as of the time of this video, no arrest has been made. Multiple messages claiming to be ransom demands were sent to various recipients in the days following Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. Some were sent directly to local media outlets. The full contents of most of these notes have not been publicly disclosed. What we do know is this: at least one of the messages set a deadline. FBI Special Agent Heath Janke confirmed that one note demanded a multi-million-dollar payment in Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency to be delivered by February 5th. If that deadline was missed, the demand escalated to a higher figure, with a new deadline of February 9th. Fox News reported the total demand reached $6 million. That framing, a cryptocurrency demand with escalating deadlines, is significant. It points to someone with at least a basic understanding of how digital currency transactions work, someone who believed Bitcoin offered enough anonymity to receive a ransom without being traced. Whether that belief is correct is another matter. The FBI has extensive resources for tracking cryptocurrency transactions, and this aspect of the case has almost certainly been a major focus of the investigation. But here's the problem with the ransom notes: not all of them are credible. The FBI confirmed that at least one was fake, sent by someone attempting to exploit the situation, either for money, for attention, or for reasons investigators had to work out on their own. That fake note led to the arrest of a man in California. His involvement in the actual abduction was ruled out. He saw an opportunity to insert himself into a tragedy that did not belong to him. The existence of fake ransom notes creates serious complications. Every note has to be treated as potentially genuine until proven otherwise. That means resources, time, and investigative manpower diverted to chasing leads that go nowhere, while the real perpetrator remains unidentified. On February 6th, investigators said they were looking into yet another new message. They did not reveal who received it, what it said, or whether it was genuine. The family, meanwhile, was navigating all of this in public, responding to messages they could not yet verify, pleading with an unknown person through cameras and social media, hoping that somewhere, someone was actually listening. Let us talk about what investigators actually found, the physical and forensic evidence that has been collected, and what it might mean. The most immediate piece of evidence was the blood on the front porch. confirmed to belong to Nancy Guthrie. That tells us something happened at or near her front door. Whether she was injured there during the abduction or whether the blood was from a pre-existing condition or an earlier incident is something investigators know more about than the public does. But its presence is significant. Inside the home, or in the immediate area surrounding it, investigators found DNA that does not belong to Nancy Guthrie or anyone known to her. That foreign DNA was checked against CODIS, the FBI's combined DNA index system, which contains genetic profiles from millions of convicted offenders and other sources. The result came back with no match. No match means the person who left that DNA has either never been arrested, never been processed by law enforcement in a way that generated a DNA profile, or is operating under circumstances that have kept their DNA out of every existing database. That is not a dead end. It is a puzzle piece waiting for a matching piece to appear. During the search of the surrounding area, investigators collected 16 gloves. Most were believed to have been discarded by volunteers during the search itself, people protecting their hands while combing through brush and rough terrain. But one of those gloves was different. Found approximately 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home, it appeared to match the type of gloves visible on the suspect in the surveillance footage. DNA was extracted from that glove and sent to a laboratory for analysis. The result, no match in CODIS. But Sheriff Nanos was clear. A no match does not make the evidence useless. It means that when a suspect is identified and a DNA sample is collected, investigators can potentially tie that person directly to the scene using biological evidence gathered well before any arrest was made. Investigators also examined a septic tank on the property. They brought in equipment to inspect areas not visible from the street. A rooftop camera was studied. The level of forensic attention to this property suggests investigators believe that whatever happened to Nancy began and possibly ended very close to her home. One detail that stands out: the suspect in the doorbell footage is seen covering the camera with plants, not disabling it electronically, not destroying it, physically blocking the lens with foliage. That is a strange choice. It suggests either that the suspect was unaware he could simply disconnect or destroy the device, or that he was moving quickly and improvised. It also means the camera remained operational long enough to capture his image, which is the only reason we have footage at all. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos has been the public face of this investigation from the start. He has held press conferences, spoken to media, appeared on camera repeatedly, and provided updates to a public that is hungry for any information about Nancy Guthrie's whereabouts, and not all of what he has said has been without controversy. There's a detail in the early timeline of the investigation that has generated significant online discussion. When the 911 call was made, authorities were notified. Some people following this case have pointed to a window of roughly 41 minutes in the early response and questioned what information law enforcement had access to in that period and how certain decisions were made. This remains an area of public speculation more than confirmed fact, and it is important to be honest about that distinction. But the question is being asked, and the fact that it keeps circulating tells you something about how much confidence people have in how this investigation has been run. More concrete are the criticisms from retired law enforcement professionals who have spoken publicly. The first major criticism concerns the crime scene. Investigators released it, stopped actively processing it in allowed access approximately 30 hours after Nancy Guthrie was reported missing. Forensic experts said that timeline was far too short. A kidnapping scene involving an elderly victim, blood evidence, a pacemaker, and a masked armed suspect typically demands much more time and tighter control. Releasing it too early risks contamination. It means reporters or others could potentially disturb evidence that had not yet been fully documented. Whether that happened here is unknown, but the criticism came from credentialed people and has not gone away. The second criticism concerns the DNA evidence. When the DNA was ready to be processed, Nanos chose to send it to a private laboratory in Florida rather than to the FBI's own laboratory at Quantico, Virginia. The FBI lab at Quantico is widely considered one of the most advanced forensic facilities in the world. The decision to bypass it raised honest professional questions about why and whether it affected the speed or quality of the results. The third criticism is about communication. Several retired law enforcement analysts observed that Nanos's frequent media appearances sometimes created more confusion than clarity. Some of his statements opened doors to theories that his department then had to walk back. The criticism is not that he spoke to the public. Transparency has real value. The criticism is that the communication sometimes appeared focused more on presence than on substance. One thing Nanos did do clearly and firmly. On February 16, 2026, he issued a formal statement that all siblings and spouses in the Guthrie family had been cleared as suspects. He described them as victims. He said that suggesting otherwise was not only wrong, it was cruel. That statement mattered. In high-profile disappearances, the people closest to the victim are almost always the first to face suspicion, not because they are usually guilty, they often are not, but because investigators need to eliminate people close to the victim before the search can expand outward. In Nancy Guthrie's case, that process was accelerated by the public nature of the story. Within the first week, online communities were already dissecting every available detail, and one name rose to the top of that speculation with particular intensity: Tommaso Cioni. Cioni is married to Annie Guthrie. He is Nancy's son-in-law, and he was part of the group of family members who dropped Nancy off at her home on the evening of January 31st, which made him one of the last people known to have seen her before she disappeared. The online discussion around him ranged from cautious questions to outright accusations. Social media posts, forum threads, and amateur investigation channels built narratives out of timeline details, body language in public videos, and proximity to the event. None of it was based on evidence. All of it was theory, and a great deal of it was the kind of behavior that causes real harm to real people already living through, something no one should have to endure. Sheriff Nanos shut it down. Cioni, along with every other member of the Guthrie family, was cleared, fully and formally. Law enforcement had done what law enforcement does: examined the evidence, checked the timelines, and concluded that none of them were responsible. Nanos raised the possibility publicly that this abduction may not have been carried out alone. The level of planning involved, the earlier visit to the property, the targeted disconnection of the camera, the precision of the timing, the apparent knowledge of Nancy's routines, suggests at minimum that the operation was organized. Whether that organization came from one determined individual or from a group working together is something investigators are still working through. Nanos said the possibility of an accomplice had not been ruled out. He was careful. He did not say there was one, only that the theory was still alive. This matters for a specific reason. If more than one person was involved, the chances of someone talking increase. People in groups are harder to silence. Someone knows something. Somewhere, a conversation was had that put this plan together. And someone who was part of that conversation is living with that knowledge right now. The reward, $1.2 million, is designed, in part, to make that silence feel less worth keeping. On February 13th, 2026, law enforcement served search warrants on a home near Nancy Guthrie's property. A man named Luke Daly and his 77-year-old mother, Mary Chapman Daly, were brought in for questioning. A gray Range Rover was seized from the property. Online, the reaction was immediate. Photographs circulated. People compared Daly's build to the masked figure in the surveillance footage. Forums filled with analysis, some reasonable, much of it reaching. For a brief period, many people were certain this was the break they had been waiting for. Both Luke Daly and his mother were released within 24 hours. Nanos confirmed they are not suspects. No link to the case has been established. The search warrant was a lead, and the lead went nowhere. That is how investigations work. You chase every thread. Most of them end in nothing. Something about this case has hit a nerve beyond the immediate facts. Experts in elder safety and criminology have observed that Nancy Guthrie's abduction has forced a wider conversation about the vulnerability of elderly people living alone, even in neighborhoods that feel safe. The Catalina foothills area is exactly the kind of place where people assume crime does not reach. Affluent, quiet, calm at night. People move there because it feels secure. And yet, Nancy Guthrie was taken from that neighborhood, from her own porch, in the early hours of a Sunday morning, in a community where her neighbors had no idea anything was happening. Security experts have pointed out that the sense of safety in high-income neighborhoods can become its own vulnerability. People lower their guard. A doorbell camera is not enough if someone knows how to cover it. A lock is not enough if someone has already visited the property more than once and studied the layout. The conversation this case has opened about what it actually takes to keep elderly people living alone genuinely safe is one that will continue long after this investigation concludes. One of the more unexpected developments in the weeks since Nancy Guthrie disappeared has been the emergence of a grassroots investigation community, largely made up of women, many of them mothers, who have dedicated hours and sometimes entire nights to following this case. They share freeze frames from surveillance footage and group chats. They cross-reference timestamps. They map distances between the property and nearby Walmart locations. They track publicly available information with the kind of focused energy that professional investigators would recognize, even if the methods are less structured. Some of them have lost sleep. Some have cried over a woman they have never met because they looked at Nancy Guthrie's face in a photograph and thought about their own mothers, or themselves, or the world their children are growing up in. This phenomenon is complicated. At its worst, it produces the unfounded accusations that damaged innocent people close to this case. At its best, it represents a community of people who refuse to let a missing woman be forgotten, who keep the pressure of public attention on an investigation that might otherwise fade from the news cycle. The line between those two things is not always clean, but the impulse behind it is worth understanding and worth respecting. As of the time of this video, Nancy Guthrie has been missing for nearly 4 weeks. Investigators have worked through more than 40,000 leads. They have reviewed Walmart surveillance footage from multiple locations. They have collected DNA evidence that does not match anyone in the national database. They have analyzed ransom notes, at least one fake, others unverified. They have questioned and released persons of interest. They have coordinated with Mexican authorities. The Guthrie family has reached out to a Mexican nonprofit that works to locate missing people in the region. President Trump, who ordered federal authorities to assist in the investigation, called the case very unusual. Sheriff Nanos, when asked whether he believed Nancy was still in the local area, said simply that he believed she was somewhere nearby, though he could not explain why he felt that way. That is not a confident statement, but it is an honest one. And right now, honesty is something. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She has a pacemaker. She depends on medication that she no longer has access to. Every day that passes is a day her health is at greater risk. The urgency of this case is not abstract. It is biological. It is real. Somewhere out there, someone knows where she is. Someone saw something, heard something, was told something. The question is whether that person will come forward before time runs out. This is where we stand. A woman taken from her porch in the middle of the night. A family broken open in front of the entire country. A suspect with no name, no match in any database, and no confirmed motive beyond a cryptocurrency demand that has not been verified as genuine. An investigation facing serious questions about its own management, while simultaneously working through 40,000 leads under enormous public pressure. If you know anything about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, anything at all, please make the call. The number is 1-800-225-5555. 324. You do not have to give your name. You do not have to identify yourself. You can remain completely anonymous. But if you saw something, heard something, or know someone who has been acting strangely since the beginning of February, that one phone call could bring a family their mother back, please do not sit on it. Make the call. And if this video gave you a clearer picture of this case, please hit the subscribe button. It genuinely helps me keep doing this work. Every subscriber tells me that these stories matter to you, and that motivates me to keep covering them with the care and seriousness they deserve. Thank you for watching, and thank you for caring about Nancy Guthrie.